My name is Rodrigo Prieto, and I'm the cinematographer for Killers of the Flower Moon. It was an ongoing process, figuring out how we were going to shoot this movie, what it was going to look like. Sometimes interesting with Scorsese how things are very intuitive. You know, we're very technical and we're very careful with our choices and our decisions, but then sometimes things are just a feeling, you know, the gut feeling. And I find that exciting, you know. So I show him many ideas, many tests. We throw them up against the wall and see what sticks. You know, and some things just fall to the ground. We tested infrared, we tested pinhole photography, things like that. In any case, it was something that kept evolving, and it's always very exciting to do that with Scorsese. Since the script was changing and evolving, that also meant that we kept thinking of new ideas and how could we better represent each character and their emotional arc, the Osage Nation and their people, and the moments when they're on their own. And then we wanted also to evolve the look as the movie progressed. So we tested many, many things, and even right up to and during production, even when we started filming, we were still testing things out and figuring it out, and even new scenes were being written. Since we had already established this idea in the film that we were using photography and color photography as a basis of representing the different groups. For example, the white settlers were photographed with an emulation of autochrome, which is one of the first color techniques that was invented by the Lumiere brothers. So that was an import from Europe. So that's why it felt appropriate to use that for the Ernest and their family, because they're imported from Europe. And the Osage we photographed as naturalistic as possible in terms of color. The scenes where they're alone and their rituals and that sort of thing. For the most part, we used Aricam cameras, and I've always loved those cameras for film negative, Aricam LT and Aricam ST. They're an amalgamation of the older Arriflex cameras and Movicam. So they adapted the best of both of those cameras, which I used both of them. Lenses was another interesting thing because early on decided we wanted to shoot anamorphic because of the very horizontal nature of the landscapes in Oklahoma. But at the same time, I didn't want the modern anamorphic look, but I didn't want it to be the old glass, distorted, you know, any of that. Talking with Dan Sasaki at Panavision, he adapted the T-series lenses and detuned them ever so slightly so that they're a little bit less sharp, so that the flares wouldn't be the characteristic blue flare of anamorphic lenses. They become white flares. And this was important because we incorporated the sun into several shots. When I was talking to the Osage during our research process, I learned the importance of the position of the sun for their different rituals. Even for the building of their towns and villages, the orientation has to do with the travel of the sun. So I decided, you know, we needed to see the sun when Molly is praying at dawn. So I knew that we needed to have lenses that would photograph this in a way that I would find appealing and not modern. Color grading is an essential part of cinematography, and I love it. And I try to prepare for it as much as possible beforehand in pre-production, especially with a director like Scorsese, who is really editing for him is such an important part of the process, and he takes his time with Thelma Schoonmaker. They spend months editing. They'll be looking at an image, and they get used to that, and they fall in love with what they've been working with, and there's a certain emotion that they've been feeling with the images, the way the dailies were made. Since then, I've been very keen on making sure that the lookup tables are, even shooting on film negative, they're completely designed, and we know that the dailies will at least have the color saturation, the contrast, and the color that are similar color to what I want it to be at the end.
Whose house is it?
It's Bill and Rita's!
It's Bill and Rita's house!
An important part in this story is when Molly's sister, her house explodes. She's murdered along with her husband, Bill and Rita. We thought that we would see the house exploding. So we started discussing with visual effects and special effects. What do we do? A miniature? How do we do this house exploding? But as things were evolving, I remember Scorsese saying, no, we don't need to see the house explode. We're with the characters. I want to see it happening through their experience, which I thought was very effective. Scorsese is a very brave filmmaker, no doubt, in every sense. In his use of the camera, he makes a decision and he sticks by it. So in the case of the scene, the moment of the explosion, first of all, deciding we're going to be with the characters. And this decision of the shot to be kind of at a distance. I think what we did, we started with them getting into the bed and just pulled out and then saw the window, the bed, just sort of a wide, peaceful shot, which we're not feeling peaceful as an audience. We know that there's something brewing, right? So that adds tension to the moment. The fact that he's not going to close-up of Ernest and the shot of the window and the house and, you know, the person putting the bomb under the house, you know, that would maybe be the traditional way of doing it. Scorsese chooses not to do any of that, just to be peacefully far away, and I think that's actually very powerful. We didn't even have a B camera, and we're talking about, you know, glass breaking, you know, the main actors are right there, and typically you'll have another camera for protection, right? Scorsese says, this is a shot. This is what I'm trying to say, and this is the angle that I want. So why add a B camera? And I find that refreshing. And I do remember when we're shooting it, holding my breath. I think everybody, you know, and for most of us there, it was, the safety of the actors at the moment. But for me, it was also, will the flash of light happen at the correct moment? Will it all be synchronized? Will the camera be okay? Will it shake? Will the operator, you know, there are all these things that you're worried about. And fortunately, it worked on take one. We shot it in the airplane hangar in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We had air cannons with some debris, and the glass was, candy glass. And we had a lightning effect to synchronize to the moment of the breaking glass. Then after that, when they go downstairs, then the next piece is actually in Fairfax. So it's a Steadicam shot that goes around the characters, and it's just this kinetic moment that we choreographed, and it really is meant to feel the chaos of a moment like that, and the fear, and the voices, and what do we do with the cowboy, the baby, and what do we do, where do we go, you know, and Ernest, go find out, you know, and he leaves the house, so the camera just circling all around. Then it's from a night interior, it becomes a night exterior. On the same shot, we go out the door and we see Ernest going out. And these night exteriors around Fairfax were lit by the residents with strings of light bulbs that they called frayed lights, because they were scared of what might happen. You know, all these people are being murdered. Nobody knew who was doing it, so they just put up these lights. We made these rigs that were hung from construction cranes or condors, and we'd fly these over the scene, and that would give this warm glow that would definitely match all these frayed lights. And then we cut to a street where we find the house has been destroyed. So this is a house we picked as a location because it was going to be destroyed. It was going to be torn down and something else was going to be built. Then we went to film other scenes while the art department destroyed the house, dug a hole in it, and made a sculpture basically of the destruction with the pieces of the original house. And then from a lighting standpoint, the surrounding streets are lit with these cranes with these light bulbs around them. But the fire itself, or the house in flames, we very strategically placed the different fires with gas, burners and stuff. And I lit the whole place with 20 by 20 frames with silver lame. Silver lame is a material that's silver. It's loose. We weren't tied onto the edges of the frame. We let it be loose, just tied on the top. So that way the grips could move it. And when you're bouncing a light into it, with a gel, the reflection is kinetic. It's like fire. You have bright moments, you have dark moments. The shadows on the face move. And on those frames, just out of shot, I was bouncing 10Ks and 5Ks and I think maybe even a 20K with different gels, orange gels, CTO, CTS, different types of warm gels. And we had a few grips just moving the silver lame, and that created this warm light representing fire. The whole scene has this hellish orange look to it. Now we have to do him coming back. And Scorsese had designed a shot which was a Steadicam shot through the doorway of in the porch, going into the house and finding Molly and the kids and the nanny somewhere. When we were about to do it, Scorsese asked Lily, "Where would you be?" But of course he meant, would you be here or would you be there, right? And she said, I would have gone down to a cellar. And I start panicking because I know Scorsese. Now we're looking for a cellar. You know, he's not going to tell her, "Oh, no, I mean, would you be here or here?" Right? He's like, okay, a cellar. You know, he really listens to the actors, and he'll adapt the shoot and the shots to what they're feeling and what they're needing. We hadn't scouted for that. So the location manager said, "Oh, if you go into the kitchen, there's a door down there, that's a cellar." So we went there, and indeed we opened that door. Okay, there's this staircase going down. Well, that's where. So then we redesigned the shot to go, you know, through the living room, pan into the kitchen, and then through the opening of the door and finding her on the bottom with everyone else, which became a very powerful moment because, well, for me, from a practical perspective, it was, okay, now I need to light that. What would be a light source down there? And I'm asking, you know, the set decorators, bring me an oil lamp, which we didn't have. We didn't need it for that location, right? So they ran to find one. In the meantime, I thought, okay, let's say there will be an oil lamp, and I started hiding some lights behind a beam where that would represent the light from the oil lamp. So oil lamp arrived. We were able to shoot it that way. So what happens in the shot is the camera is moving through the living room, and you're hearing, because there are microphones down in this cellar, you're hearing the kids crying, and it became such a powerful moment. Rather than just going in through the door and seeing them there, that would have worked. But the symbolism also of her being down there and seeing Ernest upstairs, and that interaction from a distance, he just shakes his head and she knows what happened. And she yells, screams. My whole body, you know, I just felt it to my core. So it's a kind of thing where, as a cinematographer, you're thinking of all these technical aspects and creative aspects of how to make the perspective work, and the lighting and the atmosphere and the mood, and you're thinking of all these things. And then the shot happens and the emotion explodes. And that's my favorite things when that happens in films that I'm shooting. Pretty complicated scene to shoot. It was one of those hectic, you know, really difficult night exteriors where you don't have enough time and you're just running around trying to get each shot. And also dangerous, you know, even though this was made by the art department and we previously said, okay, this is the path that Ernest is gonna walk. Still, it was actually felt pretty dangerous. At a certain point, you know, there were nails. They were like, "Oh, careful with that." You know, there's a scene. I'm very proud of it, and it really felt powerful when we were shooting it. And I'm hoping, I think that that came up, you know, to the screen.